I also want to thank the committee for suggesting that, along with me, Deborah Bial speak at Commencement this year. I have tremendous respect for Debbie Bial. In fact, she embodies so many of the traits I want us to think about today. She is, like I trust you are, well educated. She received her undergraduate degree from Brandeis and a master's and PhD degree from Harvard University. In fact, Derek Bach, a retired Harvard University president, told me one day in Washington he thought Debbie may be the brightest graduate student he had ever had. According to the MacArthur Foundation, and documented in your program, Debbie is a genius. She is also young, as you are young, and she's made a significant contribution to our society as a young person. Over 2,200 Posse scholars have attended some of the best institutions of higher education in the country because of her work in Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, and Washington. Finally, the reason I appreciate Debbie being with us today is that she has truly learned the meaning of service to other people. So in the format Deb and I agreed on for today, I have two questions I'd like to ask her, and then when she finishes, she has a couple of questions she would like to ask me, and then we will proceed with commencement. My questions for Debbie are these. You have done so many things in your career. What do you think motivates people to do good things? And then secondly, what are your hopes for this year's class?
Hello. Wow, you look incredible. Really, I wish you could see how you look from up here because you look gorgeous. The sun and the trees, it's good. But thank you, Dr. Bottoms and the DePauw Board of Trustees and all of you for inviting me to join your truly great president. He is a great president, isn't he? In his final commencement speech as president of DePauw University. Congratulations, class of 2008. You have so much to be proud of and so much to look forward to. And I have to say this, Posse graduates, I'm very proud of you. So I realize that I am looking at more than 500 individual futures, but I'm also looking at a collective future, and I want to talk a little bit about what's ahead. Let's see. Each of you will fall in love, maybe more than once. You will find your way into the workforce, and in your lifetime have up to 5 different careers. You will have children. You will overcome personal obstacles. Some of you will become very good at making rice or fried eggs or even soufflés, maybe. Some of you will master the guitar, learn how to analyze the gross national product, or develop a knack for digging out the next big news story. You will travel. But what will you do as a collective? What will motivate you to do good things? How will you care? Did you ever have a moment when your whole heart went out to someone? Maybe you didn't have time to think about helping or supporting or nurturing or encouraging, but you did it. Maybe you're someone who even saved someone's life once. But I hope you also think about extending that instinct to the larger world out there. And it's not hard to see that this world needs help. This past Thursday, there was a picture on the front page of the New York Times of 2 parents holding the body of their child killed in the earthquake in China. Some people called the Times to complain. The photo was too upsetting, they felt. It shouldn't be on the cover of a newspaper. Well, what do you think? Are you going to be a generation that chooses to avoid looking or knowing? Or are you going to look at everything and care? You know, my hope for you, which is Bob's second question, my hope for you is that you care about the more than 4,000 American soldiers who have lost their lives in Iraq and the tens of thousands of Iraqis who are losing theirs. My hope is that you care about the genocide in Darfur and the chlorofluorocarbons that are emitted each day into the atmosphere. I hope you care that as a generation, you may end up poorer, you may have less access to health care, and have fewer job prospects than your parents. I hope that you care that our public schools are broken and that women still make only 77 cents to the dollar that every man earns. When I started Posse, I thought it could be a way to create a new kind of network of leaders on this very great planet, one that would represent the true diversity of this country and therefore reflect the concerns, the cares, the dreams of all Americans. It would be this network that would sit at the table where decisions get made and better represent the voice of the collective. I see that vision coming true with our incredible Posse graduates. But when I stand up in front of all of you here, I also see it coming true with each of you in the equation. This is a historic time in our country. We can't deny that the United States has made great progress in terms of civil rights and women's rights. We may have the first African American nominee for president in the United States. Now that deserves a moment. But we would be foolish to think we're done. Remember, too, that if Barack Obama becomes president, the number of US senators who are black will go from 1 back to 0. So when I think about leadership, I don't just think about individuals. I don't just think about Emily Lyons or Steve Schott or Veronica Diaz or Brandon DeLesline. I think about all of you working together, listening to one another, debating like you've done in class at DePauw, learning from each other and collaborating to make the best possible future for us all. The most powerful forms of leadership are those that bring voices together, hearts together, minds together, and most importantly, actions together for the greater good. If we care about each other's causes and pool our resources, if we care about each other's problems, we have much more chance to build greater prosperity for all. My husband, he's an op-ed columnist, and he says the American dream is on life support. Well, let's prove him wrong. I hope that you care enough to reach into the depths of your soul and live your life so fully that you feel as if you're about to burst. Love like crazy, learn like crazy, and care about each other like crazy. I know you can do it. You're sitting on that seat right there. You're graduating. Feel it. This represents a moment of transition in time. Sit on the edge. You are about to walk across this stage and into the world. And boy, do we need you. Thank you. Okay, but now I have 2 questions for your wonderful president, Dr. Bob Bottoms. And here they are. You ready? Okay. After 30 years, he's been here 30 years at DePauw. 30 years. 22 of them as president. You've met thousands of students and thousands of alumni and hundreds of faculty and trustees. I want to know, what have you learned about people in the world that could serve these incredible graduates? And then, just like you asked me, I want to know, what's your hope for this generation of students?
Those weren't the questions we agreed on. After 30 years at DePauw, what I've learned after listening to John and Debbie is that the president is a very old person. But I have had the opportunity, as Debbie suggested, to observe the lives of thousands of students and alumni, and had the opportunity to look at what I would call the landscape of America. And I would mention only two things that I have learned about people. The first one is fairly obvious. In fact, if you think about it, you've already learned this. We live in a world of imperfect people. You've already found some of them. You found them in your residence halls or your living units, or you found them in internships when you left campus, or you found them when you studied abroad, or maybe you even found some in the offices of the university. You'll encounter this imperfection again and again. I remember one of my favorite speakers at DePauw being Parker Palmer, and he defined community in this way. He said, a community is a place where when a person you really dislike the most moves away, somebody always comes to take their place. How do we relate to people? How do we relate to people who are imperfect? How do we relate to people who disappoint us? Do we dismiss them? Do we build fences around them and let the world get smaller and smaller as we build more and more fences? Do we ignore them? Or do we deal with them and learn to love, to accept imperfections in people, realizing that no matter whom you happen to be thinking about now as one of the most imperfect people you know, we are totally unaware of all the factors that made them the way they are. So we will learn to deal with imperfect people, and we will try to set examples. That's the challenging side. In fact, that might be the darker of the two things that I have learned, but there's also a very bright side. Debbie asked about what I've learned in the last 30 years. The most important thing that I have learned in working with students like you and faculty members and alumni, the most important thing I've learned is that the most important aspect of life is serving one another. The philosopher Jacob Needleman, in his essay, Two Dreams of America, describes an event that could have taken place anywhere, but this happened to take place in Mexico City. It was right before Christmas, when a gentleman named Juan and his 5-year-old son were playing in the living room, and they were beginning to decorate the Christmas tree. And the doorbell rang, and there was another approximately 5-year-old child at the door, torn clothes, tattered, not clean, holding his hand out. And Juan told his 5-year-old son to go into the bedroom, or go into his son's room, and get a toy and bring it to this young man. Give him one of your toys. Well, the boy did exactly as he was told. He returned with a toy that was broken and torn, and one that he, in fact, didn't mind giving away. The father said, no, you go get one of your best toys. He started crying and said, I won't do it. He said, yes, you will. You go get one of your best toys and bring it back. And the little boy was still crying, but one son came back, and he left the two 5-year-olds in the living room to exchange that toy. And he didn't know quite what the conversation would be like, but according to Jacob Needleman, the young 5-year-old who gave away the toy came back and said, Papa, can I do that again? Now, I don't want to overanalyze this event nor to romanticize it, The little 5-year-old boy didn't feel righteous. He didn't feel altruistic. He didn't feel he needed to be repaid. But he had been given a taste of freedom, a taste of the freedom that comes when we do learn to love, when we do learn to care. Many people in your class encountered Bell Hooks when she was here last fall. And she correctly pointed out that there are not many public discussions about love in our culture. But if you think about the history that you've learned as a student at DePauw, you realize that all great social movements, all movements for social justice, have strongly emphasized the love ethic. 2 examples you probably studied while here at DePauw. One was Martin Luther King, a 20th century Christian. The other, Gandhi, a 20th century Hindu. And what made these 2 individuals exceptional was not that they were smarter than their peers or kinder than their neighbors. What made them exceptional was that they learned to live out the truth of their most basic values. The true meaning of life, we would argue, Debbie and I, is learning to serve other people. Now, Debbie asked me the same question I asked her. What is my hope for your class? Well, I have great hopes for your class, and I would put it this way. I hope that not just 1 or 2 of you, but many of you seated here will use your lives to cause your class to be one that in fact did change the world. Maybe you are one of those special people. If your class is like other DePauw classes, I would analyze you this way. If you turn on my computer in the office, one of the computer screens I have is a photograph of Lee Hamilton, a DePauw graduate, accepting the 4 Freedoms Award from the Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Institute, the Freedom Medal, the Freedom from Fear Award that he was given. I have talked to him many times. I have learned a lot from him, and I can tell you, if Lee was here today, he would say, I had no idea when I was 21 years old what my career would be like. But he is someone who has helped change this world. A lot of you have heard me talk, and you have been in conversations with me about internationalizing this campus and welcoming people from other cultures to Greencastle. Another DePauw graduate who is a hero of mine sort of helped start this whole emphasis on internationalization. I'm thinking about Tim Soso, the chair of Cummins Engine in Columbus, Indiana. And sometimes we brag about CEOs who have been graduated from DePauw. And sometimes when that image of a chairman of a large Fortune 500 company comes in your mind, the first thing you think of is how much money they must have and how little we have. But it was Tim and his company who showed me the example, and the first trip Gwen and I made to India, of a company that built schools and chartered kindergartens and built a school for the blind and generally improved the community by being a good steward. I guarantee you he never had any idea as a student at DePauw that he would be able to do this. So if you think I'm asking a lot of average people to do extraordinary things, consider this. The extraordinary people who have sat where you sat perhaps viewed themselves as average people when they were graduating. Perhaps you think, as I close, this is lofty-minded rhetoric. But a lot of you have read from the works of the Dalai Lama. And he has written, although attempting to bring about world peace, or a better world, or ever how we want to frame it, Debbie and I, attempting to bring about peace and justice through the internal transformation of individuals is very difficult. But, said he, It's the only way. So I hope for your class that you'll follow Debbie's example of service to others. Those examples set forth by the honorary degree recipients today, and that you will learn by experience the joy of loving others even in an imperfect world. And you will learn by experience that true freedom, true meaning is found in serving others. And if you do, to borrow a phrase from Tom Brokaw, then, my friends, you will be the greatest generation. Thank you.